inside the NBA had this conversation. And apparently, according to this tweet right here, which got a decent amount of traction, Kenny Smith straight up hating on Steph Curry on inside. Pause. Come on, bro. Pause. What? Well, let's see what he had to say, because I honestly haven't seen the full clip. So.
Is he the best player ever?
Freak
No.
of me.
Not as the best player ever.
You can do it all except.
No, he's the best position. He might be best in his position.
Hey man, you can do it all.
No.
Listen, his title is solidified. He's the best shooter ever by far. But I'm saying because of what he's done and how long he's done it, do we put him in that conversation? Because you look at Jordan 6, Kobe 5, he right there. LeBron 4, him 4.
I'm a barbershop talker.
Yeah,
like, because I can't. Yeah, I'm gonna put myself in a barbershop that you're talking about. He is one of the best at his position ever, without question.
So
doesn't that put him in the conversation?
No.
When you're saying, okay, so you wouldn't say, well, let's put it in
you
the
can't put it.
let's put the best shooter of all time in the conversation.
No, I know he's not the best shooter of all time.
Yes,
he might
he
be
is.
one of the best point guards of all time.
Who's not the
not
best
just the best shooter. He's not.
Okay, that's hate.
That, what he just said right there, unless there's some more context to it, that's hate. I ain't gonna lie.
Just the best shooter.
I know, but you might say that if you're going to say, here's our pool of best player ever.
Ever.
No, that pool ain't deep. That pool's not. There's not deep water in there.
So you wouldn't include the best.
There's only like 3.
You wouldn't include the best shooter of all time in that conversation.
I wouldn't bet we include the best rebounder of all time in that conversation.
Thank you. I understand Steph Curry is the best shooter of all time. I have him as the best shooter of all time. But stop bringing that up in these discussions. Just being the best at one thing does not make you just, you're in the GOAT conversation because you're the best shooter of all time. Is Magic in that conversation? Is over the fact that he's the best passer of all time? Like, what the fuck? What is that?
No.
I wouldn't put a statistical category.
Who's in that pool?
That pool is very thin.
Who's in it?
Michael Jordan,
Got it.
LeBron James,
Yes.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
Yes.
and then we start reaching.
No, you don't reach. Mr. Bean?
Who?
Mr. Kobe Bean's not in that conversation?
He's right. He's next. Then we start reaching.
No.
Yeah, we start reaching after.
Kobe Bean, and I'm saying I think I put Steph Curry in that conversation.
I'm just saying, to me, that's the pool to me. Kareem, LeBron, Michael, because they dominate in so many areas. They can have an off shooting night and affect everything that goes in the
He
game.
had an off shooting night in the first half. You saw it in the second
No.
half?
Defensively,
He makes it
rebounding, block shots,
Come on, Ernie, you just left me.
leadership. He's a great now. You say now is he the one of the top 2-3 point guards ever? Without question. Without question.
But that doesn't qualify you for the conversation of
Best player. No,
of all time.
not best player ever.
We've got
that poll. Ain't a lot of.
Where's the hate? Can someone, if there's any Warriors fans in the building, where is the hate? Kenny was right. Kenny was right. Now, I will say this. I guess the only pushback that I have is I feel like for me to be a top 10 player ever, top 10 caliber player, because I do believe there are more than 10 players that are top 10 caliber. You need to have but a lot of those players have some sort of GOAT case. As much of a reach as it is, there's a case there. You know what I'm saying? So like essentially what Kenny said. After the 3, then you start reaching. So for me, Kobe, there is an argument for him. There's an argument for him. As weak as it is, the argument for Kobe, at least in my opinion, is best player in the hardest era ever. That would be the argument for Kobe Bryant. And now, again, this is why I feel like even that is a reach, because you can make an argument that Tim Duncan is the best in that era. But you can also make a pretty strong argument that Kobe as well is the best player in the 2000s from start to finish. Because I feel like Tim Duncan, I think in the first 3-4 years of that era, Tim Duncan and Shaq were 1 and 2. Kobe was still top 5, but Tim Duncan and Shaq were 1 and 2. But Kobe was still top 5, right? By 2006, Tim Duncan's starting to wane in that conversation. Shaq is on the tail end of his career. Kobe is still top 3. And then by the end of the 2000s, Tim Duncan is starting to wane. Cardiac is saying he's still top 5 from 08 to 10. You can make that argument. But Kobe Bryant in that time span was top 3 for a majority of people. Arguably the best in the world for a majority of people. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to make the argument that the dude who was top 5 in the first 4 years of the 2000s and top 2, arguably 1 for the rest of the decade is the best player of that era, and if you want to make the argument that that era is the hardest era in history, then you can make the case that, yeah, if we're talking about competition, you want to talk about finals competition, you want to talk about era competition, Jordan playing in the hardest era, you can make the argument that the 2000s was the hardest era to play in, was the most talented era to play in from the top end of things, and Kobe Bryant was a king among kings. And also, another argument that Kobe has, in my opinion, is the best all-around player. That was the other one I was thinking of. Now, you might be saying, BSOLZ, you are bugging out. And again, these to me are reach arguments for Kobe. But if your definition of the best all-around player is who is the player with the least amount of weaknesses, if that is your criteria for who is the best all-around player, name me a player who has less weaknesses than Kobe. LeBron, and that's what I'm saying. That's the argument. And that's why I feel like it's weak. But LeBron is a poor free throw shooter. Not poor, but LeBron is he's an average free throw shooter, and sometimes it becomes detrimental to his team. That's LeBron has years where he's shooting 60% from the line. Like I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? And for a majority of LeBron's career, the 3-ball was a weakness. I'm sorry. It was. It was. And his post game, in the early half of his career was kind of weak. I'm not gonna lie. But for Kobe, from I would say 2001 all the way to 2013, we're talking about a dude who, as a shooting guard, because shot blocking as a 6'6" point guard, yes, he's not an A plus at. But even shot blocking was not a weakness for Kobe Bryant. You know what I'm saying? Like all areas of the game, all facets of the game, there really wasn't a weakness in Kobe's game. You know what I'm saying? Maybe shot selection. Maybe like shot selection would probably one. So how can Kobe be the best all-around player when he's not better than MJ? Again, this is just based off of if your criteria for the best all-around player is the least amount of weaknesses. Michael Jordan was not a great three-point shooter. Like, the 3-ball was a weakness for Michael Jordan. Now, we can point towards era and why that is. But again, I'm just making the reach argument for Kobe. All right? This is the reach argument for Kobe. So, I disagree with Kenny on that front. But going back to his overall arching point with Steph Curry, I agree, okay? I agree with the point that, Steph Curry's a great player, but him being just the best in his position, him being the best shooter of all time, I'm sorry, that is not enough to put you in the GOAT conversation. It's not. Because if there's two centers that are just, if you look at their career, is just better than the best point guard of all time, just because you're the best in a position does not mean that you're better than the number 2 center of all time. If you match up the careers, that second greatest center of all time has a better career than you. It just doesn't work out that way. You know what I'm saying? That's such a weird criteria. And then the whole shooting argument. So you don't think the best shooter of all time is in that category? Is in that conversation? No. Being the best in one attribute of the game, and I understand shooting is a big part of basketball, but being the best in one attribute of the game is not enough. Now, if you wanted to say best offensive player, then we can have a little bit more of a conversation, because that's such an overarching thing that is different. Even if you want to say best defensive player of all time, on both sides of it, that's a different conversation than just one aspect of one side of the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, that'd be crazy. Like, again, Magic should not be in the best player of all time conversation just because he's the best passer of all time. You know what I'm saying? What's another conversation? I don't know. Bill Russell shouldn't be in the GOAT conversation just because he's the best rebounder. Kyrie shouldn't be in the conversation just because he's the best ball handler. Like that's such a whack take, and that just logically doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. You can pull the gatekeep card all you want. It logically, don't care who the fuck you're coming from, that just does not make sense. It just doesn't. But I was in a space with Omar yesterday, and he was also having a discussion about this take. And the conversation was about, and I will say this too, because let me bring up what Shaq said again, because that wasn't his only point. I think he said something along the lines of longevity and how long he's been able to do it. And first of all, I'm glad that we're noticing Steph Curry's longevity more now. Because it wasn't too long ago when his lack of longevity was a pain point of these conversations. Curry hasn't done it long enough. But now we've evolved the conversation to, hey, Curry's been doing this for a long ass time and we're not talking about it. So that's a dope transition in the conversation that I'm seeing. However, as much as great as that is, because of the fact that we're doing a ranking, because of the fact that we're doing a comparison, unless Shaq is going to say that he's going to have better longevity than LeBron James, which I don't think he's going to go towards that. I don't even think Shaq would say that. I think this is a case of 100 is better than 98, right? And if you don't get what I'm saying there, what I'm saying there is, yes, the number 100 and 98 are close as fuck. They're only two numbers apart. Right? There really isn't that significant of a gap. But 7 days out of the week, 100 is still going to be better than 98. So let me bring it back to this conversation right here. Steph Curry can have one of the greatest longevities of all time. Steph Curry can have that. But at the end of the day, if you won't even concede that it's going to be better than LeBron at any point in Steph Curry's career, then there is no conversation to be had. If that is the only argument for Steph Curry, if the argument for Steph Curry is longevity, and there is a dude out there who has better longevity, then the conversation does not exist for Steph Curry. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Does that make sense what I'm saying? So to me, Steph Curry is just not in the GOAT conversation. He just isn't. Great player. I think he has the potential to be a top 5 player of all time if we just stack up careers. But to be the greatest ever, you would need to point to me the argument as to why Steph Curry is better than this player, is better than this player, and is better than this player. And if you just cannot make that argument, then I'm sorry, you don't have an argument. I don't care how close you are in that conversation. You can be close, but if you just don't have an argument, you're not in the conversation. It is not debatable. It is not debatable. Like what's the argument for Steph Curry over LeBron? There is no argument. Unless you're such a dick sucker that you value shooting that much, There is no argument. I'm sorry. Unless you value, I don't know what else. Head to head, Cardiac said head to head. Unless you value head to head so much, what is the argument? And if 98% of people, 95% of people even, cannot come up with that argument, then there is no argument. Another point too, and this is why I wanted to bring up the space I was in yesterday, was the conversation about, can you even be the greatest of all time if you're not a two-way player? And I do want chat to answer that question. Can you be the greatest of all time being below average? Let me rephrase this. Can you be the greatest player of all time being an average at best defender? Or let me flip the question. Can you be the greatest of all time being an average at best offensive player? Because I think it should work both ways. You have to be average at O and D. Curry led the league in steals. Fuck no. I mean, I still wouldn't say he's a great defender. No, you have to be above average. I'm saying a lot of no. That's why Bill Russell isn't considered the GOAT. Really, above average. So I'm seeing a lot of no in chat. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Cause I feel like there's two players in NBA history that have really pushed this conversation to its limits. Steph is a good perimeter defender and a horrible interior defender. Okay, that's fine. If we want to nitpick how good Steph Curry is, the fact of the matter is, when you talk about those three players who are in that GOAT conversation, MJ, LeBron, and Hakeem, those three guys are great offensively and defensively. So the conversation is still, can you be, if we want to extend the question, can you be the greatest of all time not being great on both ends of the court? And like I was saying, I think Stephen Curry and Magic Johnson have really pushed this conversation to its limits because of how much they've won in their career and how valuable they have been to their teams. So Omar was saying on the space, yeah, no, you can't be the greatest of all time without being dominant on both sides of the court, because the game is there's two sides to it. It's offense and defense. And I don't know how you can sit up here and tell me that the greatest player of all time cannot be dominant or doesn't have to be dominant on both sides of the court. And I see where he's coming from. And I will say this, realistically speaking, I will say that's probably what it's going to take. But I am personally, Nolan is Omar's biggest hater, which is crazy. I don't know what Omar did to you. But you are Omar's Adam West. This is absolutely insane. But I see where he's coming from. But if you just had to, in a vacuum, ask me that question, I would personally say, let's get it. Shout to King Cobra for the 2 months. Appreciate you. Yo. I would personally say that you don't need to be dominant on both sides of the court to be the greatest player of all time. And it is going to take an extreme, but that's fine because this is the greatest player of all time conversation. It is going to take an extreme. But, and I want chat to answer this as well. If a player came along in the league who was, let's say, I don't know, John Morant defensively, right? John Morant level defensively. But offense, he's averaging 40 points, 15 assists. He's shooting 55, 45, 95. And he's winning He's winning. He's getting 2 3-peats, ends his career with 8 rings, was the best player in all of those teams, was a finals MVP. And he came into the league dominant. It wasn't on some, all right, we needed to wait till year 5 for him to come along. You know, no. Out the gate, bro was averaging 30 and 10. And then for the rest of his career, his sophomore bump was 40 and 20. And he stayed that for the next 13, 14 years. And he won 8 rings, 8 finals MVP. 8-0 even. 8-0. Finals record 8-0. Would that be the GOAT or not? Would that player right there, 5 MVPs, never a DPOY though, 5 MVPs, whatever the fuck. That's Cade. So that's what I'm saying. And I know that's extreme. I do know that's extreme. But what that tells me, and I'm saying, well, chat, answer it first before I keep going. Before I keep going. Let me see what chat is saying. Is that hypothetical player, is that the GOAT? Is that the GOAT? Once again, that is Ja Morant defensively. I would even go, hey, fuck it. Isaiah Thomas, Celtics Isaiah Thomas defensively, but had that type of career. Is that player the greatest of all time? That could be the GOAT. But doing all of that while playing no defense sounds damn near impossible. 40 and 20 easy GOAT. Not a chance. Not a chance. No, it's impossible. Literally no question the GOAT if his offense is that insane in that career. That's possibly the GOAT still. You're just explaining Luka's career. Dame defensively. Are y'all talking about Steph? It's stemming from the Steph conversation. I am seeing a lot of whatchamacallit. I am seeing a lot of yes. Isaiah Thomas. Is it? So that's what I'm saying. Even in that extreme case, I would personally say that person's the GOAT. But what that tells me is that for a majority of people, there is a threshold of, yo, I understand this player is not, great on both sides of the court, but he is so much dominant on one side of the court that it kind of supersedes the combination of offense and defense for other players. You know what I'm saying? So, like, let's say, because in this conversation, let's say Kareem is a 9 on offense and a 9 on defense, right? That hypothetical player I named would probably be like, I don't know, a 16, 17 on defense and a 2 on offense. So even if we want to play that game, like, you know what I'm saying? But even in a recent case, like we already understand this concept with the best in the world conversation when, in my opinion, we announced Jokic as damn near unanimously as the best player in the world after the 2022 NBA Finals, or 2023 NBA Finals, excuse me. We were able to see a level of dominance on the offensive end, and I'm not saying Jokic is a defensive liability, but we have seen a level of dominance on the offensive end that, because of how impactful that is for that team, and because of the fact that led to a championship for the Denver Nuggets, that a majority of NBA fans are saying, yo, okay, I understand this dude is not great on defense, but he is so impactful on the offensive end that I can say, yo, Jokic is better. Shout out to Dom for the 2 months, Dom03. But there's a level of offense that we're seeing right now that we can say, yo, Jokic is better than Giannis, even though Giannis is great offensively and defensively as well. Now, I understand that there's still going to be the select few, like Kai been here, that says, hey, Giannis was never better. Jokic was never better than Giannis, even last year. It was just recency bias as hell. But we're seeing that logic here. So this idea that you need to be great on both sides of the court. I personally don't think it needs to happen. I personally don't think it needs to happen. Even in that GOAT conversation. But realistically speaking, though, we just haven't seen that player. And I don't think that player is ever going to come. You know what I'm saying? And as great as Steph Curry is offensively, as great as Magic Johnson is offensively, those three players that I named, Kareem, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James, they are still close enough offensively, arguably, even arguably better offensively, right? When you talk about LeBron and Jordan. They are still close enough offensively to match up with a Magic Johnson and a Stephen Curry. And on the defensive side of the basketball, it's not even a conversation. You know? So again, it would need to take an extreme. It would need to take an extreme, but I wouldn't just say it's a flat out no, you know? But yeah, going back to this tweet though, because I went on a crazy rant there. Going back to this tweet though, I truly do not think Kenny Smith was hating on Steph Curry. I think everything that he said was logical.